Podcast world, this is Caribbean Power Lunch, where we feature Black-owned businesses. I am your host, Kevin Valley, and I am here in Barbados again. Today, I'm talking to a life engineer. That's right, folks. Not a regular engineer, a life engineer. Mr. Gregory Skeete. How you doing, sir?
I am doing well, thanks, Kevin. Glad to have you in Barbados.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's good to be here, B.
You got the dialect.
I try. Tony told me my Bayesian accent doesn't really work very well, but okay.
You got to start somewhere.
So here's the thing, Gregory. Right? So we were just talking about this talk you gave to YLI, Y-L-A-I, Young Leaders American Initiatives.
Yep, that's right.
Right. This talk you gave it October 2017. And you came out there like a soca star. You told everybody raise their flags. You played some soca. I think everybody stood up, they danced and everything. And you gave one of the most energetic presentations I've ever seen in my life, right? I mean, I was watching him on my friend's couch and I was standing up, I was shaking a little bit. But then I also come to learn that when you were a child and you had to give us, say a prayer in church, 2 lines. By the second line, you froze. So how did you engineer your life to the point where you could go from that shy little boy to rocking the mic at YLI?
Wow, that definitely was quite a story. And it did happen, folks. I had 2 lines, church recitation, and I forgot the second one, clean, entirely. And for a while, like Kevin, up until maybe 5 to 7 years ago,
yeah,
you could not pay me to speak in front of a crowd. I'd be the typical engineer in the back, making sure things work, be it sound, be it whatever.
Right.
But I was not the guy to take the lead.
Okay.
And honestly, the only thing that I would say brought it out of me to face the fear was when I came to realize what my dream was. When I started to see, like, if this is what I want for myself at age 70, age 80, the things I teach in life engineering, I have to reverse engineer that person.
Right.
And if I'm going to be the person who is speaking on microphones that fill the stadiums filled across the world, you gotta at least get, 5 or 10 covered to begin with. And it wasn't easy. I mean, the first time I got up to speak, knees shaking behind the scenes.
Yeah, I'm looking at you.
many times it happens, right?
Right.
But the human brain has is a deep ability to change, right? Whatever you expose it to, you may be bad at first. I was bad at first.
Right.
But with every time that you try, it always learns, always adjusts.
Okay. So how much of that would you say is really based on purpose? So, because it doesn't sound like you went to any sort of public speaking training. Okay, eyes at the camera, you keep your chest tall, you breathe in 5 seconds, out 5 seconds, make sure your belly shows. It doesn't sound like you did any of that. It just sounds like what I saw was raw passion. So that's what really got you there?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, it starts with that. So, of course, I completed my John Maxwell certification about 5 years back.
So you're a professional coach. You're not somebody who just decide, hey, I'm going to be a coach.
No, and there are a lot of people who just call themselves coaches.
Right, a life coach.
Without understanding it professionally. And a lot of gurus who tell people what to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what a coach is supposed to be.
Okay.
But we know everybody who's ever excelled, Usain Bolt in athletics, Lionel Messi in football, for example, they always had coaches. So coach is someone who comes alongside you and helps you to draw what is already in there. Adding a professional eye and a professional touch, right? But many people call themselves coaches just because.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a certification for it.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I know that, when you try to decide what career path you want to take, you're looking at accounting, architecture, a bunch of other stuff. Yeah. But you had an uncle who told you, hey, study engineering. When you study engineering, those skills will be transferred to anything. And that is true because I'm in finance, right? And Become Investable, that's a company where you help companies to optimize their businesses to attract funding, right? And we have an engineer on the team, a mechanical engineer like yourself. Mm-hmm. And he's never been in an accounting class. He hasn't done an MBA or so. But we had a financial statement to dissect, and he was like, "But KV, this thing ain't making sense. Why? How the profit could be this if the revenue is this?" And he's just breaking it down like that. And I know people. I'm not going to call their names. I know people who have studied accounting and stuff, and they weren't able to give me that level of analysis just by glancing at a financial statement. So it's really interesting how the engineering brain thinks or is trained to think.
Yeah.
So can you just break that down for me? Because I see also in your lessons, there's also an engineering vibe to it. You use a lot of engineering jargon and stuff, lean this, all these things. So very systematic. So just break that down.
Yeah, it's true. I will share a short story on that.
Oh, I love stories.
Yeah. So when I was completing maybe my third year of engineering, I attended a workshop, and a senior engineer was speaking there. And he asked the room full of student engineers, what's the definition of the word engineering? And I was like, I studied this thing for 3 years. What really is engineering?
Right.
And, because of the spelling, ENGIN and so on, people think engine. They think mechanical, they think technical, they think electrical, they think building.
Right.
But the word engineer actually stemmed from the Latin word ingeniare, meaning ingenuity or creative problem solving.
That is a highlight. That is a highlight. I love that. Okay.
Yeah. And that opened my eyes as to what a pure engineer should be. It shouldn't matter the field, the nature of your study. If you're training the fundamentals, be it life, be it business, be it mechanical, electrical, it shouldn't matter. You understand the basics of problem solving. You understand the basics of design. So in my company, Life Engineer, that's basically what we're helping people to do. See the future, make a blueprint, be it life or business, and then reverse engineer that with what you're doing today in a very systematic way.
Okay. So Life Engineer.
Yeah.
You start from young.
Yeah.
And I know you start the kids from young. You have this series, Pilly Pelican.
Pilly the Pelican,
and
yep.
Axel the Ant.
Yep.
So are you Pilly Pelican? Like how does this work? What's that series about?
So Pilly the Pelican was inspired by the national bird of Barbados, which is the pelican.
Oh, okay.
So it's a symbol of pride in industry, which is the Barbados national motto, of course. But if I were to be a character, it would be Axel the Ant.
Okay.
Because Axel is an engineer. So in the books as well, he is kind of like the problem solver. Whereas Pilly is an example of leadership. So I'm not any one character, but they're bits of me in them, but they have their own identities in a sense.
Okay.
So, yeah. Yeah, so they did. And of course, the first book is about Axel the Ant, exploring a day of life in Barbados. And I saw an interesting statistic, which is that over 85% of the publishing industry is white. In terms of the minorities, 15% is spread across Black, Asian, Latino, all the minorities. And in literacy, it's important for children to be able to see themselves in the story and see familiar places and spaces. So when a child opens a book and sees the map of Barbados, the flag of Barbados, some flying fish in cuckoo on a storybook page, it draws them in a completely different way. All right. So that was the first book. The second book was all about milk on the move, based on my experience working in the manufacturing sector now. So the books kind of focus on the topics of leadership, entrepreneurship, STEAM. So that's science, technology, engineering, art, mathematics. But we want to use it as a tool to help children to engineer their lives, but in a fun, creative way that they can relate to. So Life Engineer is more adult and corporate focused, whereas Pilly the Pelican is kids, fun, entertainment, family oriented.
I see you got a lot of support for Pilly Pelican from a lot of government agencies, the OECS, was it?
Well, that was the U.S. Embassy.
Right, the U.S. Embassy, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
To bridge down Eastern Caribbean and OECS. They joined our national project where we're helping children to dream 50 years ahead. So imagining Barbados 2066 from 2016. So if you're 10 years old now, you're going to retire at age 60 or age 70, 50 to 60 years. What are you doing in that space of time to shape the country that we want to see?
Lovely. Okay.
Yeah.
So now let's talk to the adults, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you're, I don't know, 31, 32, and you want to retire at 35.
Yep.
How do I do that?
There are many, many, many ways. Of course, and that's where there's room to get creative.
Mm-hmm.
Because firstly, if you break down your problem, it is a mathematical equation. Your retirement is not based on anything else than having enough financial resources. So the question is, what can you do from your resources, your abilities, to engineer a way to maybe earn, I don't know, let's say 30 million US
right.
over the course of 3 years.
Nice.
It may be, I don't know, 10 million $1 products every year. It may be one $10 million product per year. Who knows? But you do that assessment, that analysis. This is where I am. This is where I want to be. How can we creatively problem solve in this instance?
So it's always a nice systematic engineering, ingenuous fashion. Okay.
Because I don't like fluff.
Right.
So, just go passion. Just follow your heart. Just follow your dreams. Like, there's room for that. You have to be passionate. You have to believe. But I mean, I almost learned the hard way. Like, I'm very passionate about developing children with Pilly Pelican. But when the production costs hit you, when there's demand, when you got to ship across countries, when you got to deliver, when you need fuel, when you got to pay employees, passion doesn't pay employees.
Right.
And you need to be able to pay them, that you can build your team, that you can serve your customers. And it has to be a synergy working together, the passion and the practicality.
How many employees do you have?
So we primarily use a range of freelancers. So keeping the operation lean at this stage. Right. Using a project-oriented approach. Mm-hmm. So you hire on a project basis as required. So if it's a peak time, it could go up to 8 to 12. If it's a lower period based on what's happening, could be 2 to 4.
Is that like just-in-time management, the GIT thing?
Yeah.
See, I'm trying to use a little engineering jargon. I'm trying to keep up.
Just in time, yeah. So you try to play things that you learned in industrial engineering in your own business. Okay. I have other businesses to do it as well.
Makes sense. So John Maxwell coaching certification.
Yeah.
How you discover that? Why you wanted to do that? Like what made you decide, hey, we're gonna, I want to go and teach other people all these principles, all these engineering principles to apply to their lives to make it better. So
I first discovered John Maxwell when I discovered my own weaknesses and inefficiencies in leadership.
You inefficient?
Oh, yeah, for sure, boy, Kevin. Because you go all the way through university, you got this mechanical engineering degree, heat and power generation, HVAC, thermodynamics, fluid dynamics, all these things. And then you're put into a factory setting. And then in a couple of months, you have a team of employees to manage. Mm-hmm. These could be guys that are anywhere from 10 to 15 years older to more than double my age.
Right.
Guys who've seen it all in the industry. And you're asked now to lead. And you realize very quickly that engineering alone won't do it. It wouldn't do it. And I started to realize through making several mistakes, end up in some tricky positions in a corporate job, that I needed something else. And I started to read beyond engineering. So I had a mentor from Mexico. And one day he pulled me aside and he said, Greg, what you know about leadership? And I was like, well, that is something you do when you have worked for a period of time and you get the manager position, and then, you become a leadership person.
Right.
And he was like, no, man, you were lost. Let me show you something. He went to his computer, pulled up Amazon.com, and he said, have you ever seen this book? And it was the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. He said, Greg, you're reading manufacturing technology, you're reading fluid mechanics, you are reading all these things, but you don't know nothing about leadership, man. You're not going to go far. And he said, read this book. And I started there that was my first John Maxwell book. And I liked it because it was based on law and principle. And you learn that leadership is very much art and science.
Right.
And I love that book because I've not found any other book that does not include one or more of those 21 laws at a fundamental level. So it's the core of what I teach as a John Maxwell coach, because one of the laws is the law of lid, which means that each of us, we have a limit in some form or fashion on our personal capacity. And back then I didn't understand. He said, everything rises and falls on leadership. And I was like, everything rises and falls on leadership? Nah, man, there's economics, there's engineering, there's all these other things. And I was like, how can that be? But then, as I started to look, you realize that one person can only do so much. At some point, you reach the limit of your personal capacity for things that you can put your hands on. And you need to have other people who share your vision, who share your idea, who want to move in the same direction as you do. And I hit that limit in my job. Like, I was good at engineering, but I wasn't good at leading. And I started digging in these books, Kevin, and within a few months, I started to see changes in my team. And I started to give men the responsibility to do what they knew how to do, to honor their experience, to honor their skills, to empower them to do more. And people started seeing my shift performing above average. Like, you know, what's happening? Like, what are you doing? Is it the production planning? Is it the operations engineering? Like, no. I spent most of my shift running around serving people, making sure everybody was all right, making sure everybody had break, that you had lunch, that you were well rested, that your family all right.
Right.
Because everybody is still a person first. You know, sometimes we see people as just employees or human resources, but you don't get to separate from your own issues as an individual because you step into an office or a factory. And when I understood these things, my job was easy when I learned how to lead.
Okay, so that was so you already had the concrete and technical engineering side, but just needed that other human side.
The human side.
Okay, and that book contrasts. Does it contrast or does it complement this book, The 48 Laws of Power? Because I look at those 48 Laws of Power, and some parts of it feels like the devil is talking to me.
Kevin, you know what? I'll be honest with you. There are many books that I've read in the past 5 to 7 years. I listen to most of my books in audio. Right. So I've probably gone through about 400. The 48 Laws of Power, for me personally, was one that I haven't gotten through as yet. Because similar to you, it just didn't quite vibe with me, some of the principles. Mm-hmm. The 21 Laws of Leadership were therefore, and it's not saying that I won't go back and finish it. I may try again. But on the initial vibe that I got from it, as we see in the Caribbean, it just didn't mesh.
Yeah.
The 21 Laws, however, is built on the fundamentals of truth. Most of them were drawn from the Bible, ultimately.
Right.
And basically, it shows, in summary, as the core leadership law, that the key to greatness, the key to making anything that lasts and is sustainable, is by serving other people and empowering them to become their best. It's not about anybody putting you first and you being the man in power and you having control over minions. It's about the person that's actually creating other leaders. The law of multiplication. Because when you can build other leaders, and if you look at the 5 laws of leadership, you know, one of John Maxwell's other books, the highest level of leadership, you may not even be known to your followers. Because if you understand influence and how to develop other leaders, you don't have to exist. Like, people don't need to know that it is you, because it's not about you. It's about an idea, a vision that transcends time, that even if you leave this physical space, it doesn't matter, because the idea can live forever. So if you look at the leaders who've lasted through history, be it Jesus Christ or Martin Luther King, they were leading an idea. It was not about them. So even when they no longer existed on the planet, people still followed them because they were built around an idea. And I like that aspect of leadership, where it's not about any one individual. It's not about social media followers. It's not about any of those things. It's about people developing people towards a common vision that adds value to the world. And leadership is not positive or negative, right? Some people make this mistake that you have to be a good person to be an effective leader. there are many, many very effective leaders with a negative moral compass. So it's not a question of integrity or morality. Leadership could be good, positive, or negative. However, the principles more or less remain the same. And we need people who are positive, that understand the principles, that we can counter the negative, which naturally tends to rise.
So it's about ingenuity, a positive impact.
Yeah. For sustainable, lasting leadership, because you can lead on fear. And we've seen leaders through history who've led on fear, but it never tends to last.
Right. So ingenuity, positive impact, and serving.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about the types of services that you provide at Life Engineer Inc.
Okay. So it falls into two broad categories. We work with individuals developing themselves, be it personally or their enterprise. And we work with organizations, again, covering both aspects, the people development and the business development. Because my specialty in engineering was always systems.
Right.
So we can evaluate how your operation is actually running, streamline it, make it more efficient, more profitable, reduce waste, all those things. But we complement that with the people development, because you can build the best systems, but if you don't have influence on the team and they don't have actual buy-in to how you're looking to run your operation, the systems all flop.
Yeah, you need to enroll people before you give them responsibilities.
Yeah. You know, so it goes hand in hand. Mm-hmm. And for any organization, it could be one or the other that is weaker. So you can evaluate, okay, where your people are in terms of their development, especially leadership. Because we see in Fortune 500 companies, if a company is struggling, the first thing they do is what?
Cut off the CEO.
Cut off the CEO. Gone. Mm-hmm. Because if you were a good leader, you wouldn't be here. Right? So if your leadership is strong, then you have a chance to build throughout the organization.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about your track record a little bit. So you work with a lot of, financial sector companies. You work with the Central Bank of Barbados. You work with CIBC. Should I be calling these guys names? Let's just say you work with a lot of large banks in Barbados.
Some organizations, yeah.
How you went about acquiring such high-profile clientele, though?
Honestly, in those instances, the opportunities somewhat found me. So as you know, I've been more active on LinkedIn, making sure people are aware of what you do and what you offer. Mm-hmm. And many of the clients that I've found have actually sought me out.
Through LinkedIn, right?
Through LinkedIn, or maybe seen it there and then got in contact via the website or something else.
That's a very powerful message, because a lot of professionals, a lot of young professionals, I always tell them, hey, go on LinkedIn, post your content, whatever it is you have to talk about, you know something that you want to talk about.
Yeah.
And even if people don't like, because you realize engagement on LinkedIn is not all that great, right?
No.
Even if people don't like, even if people don't share, people see.
Yeah,
and
they do.
Not only people see, the right
people see. That is it.
So that's really powerful, right?
Yeah, because it depends on what you're offering as an entrepreneur. You know, there are times that Facebook and Instagram may be better, but when you're offering professional services, especially, LinkedIn is a great place to be. So, I mean, I still have platforms maintained on the others, but to me, LinkedIn has the most value for your efforts, basically.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you said we're not about fluff, right?
No fluff.
Yeah. So we want to get into the meat. We're about to go into the lean meat right now, right? And as you mentioned, LinkedIn, I pulled some stuff that I saw you post on LinkedIn. I really think it'd be great for I want to say a wide audience, but I'm not going to say I have a wide audience.
You will though. It's coming.
But a couple of things, right? So you said there are 5 P's to turbocharge your professional performance. Mm-hmm. How do you run through that? I think that was really interesting. You said picture, plan, practice, pause. Hey, I almost got it right. P.
Yeah, because I mean, it's just another creative way to share exactly the system that it goes through. Because I firmly believe that everything starts with a vision, which is the picture. So Stephen Covey had written, you always start with the end in mind.
Right.
A lot of people make plans, but they haven't actually imagined the end result. The clearer you can see the end result that's desired, the easier it is to start planning. So you always begin with the picture. And then the planning falls into place more easily. And I'll be honest with you, Kev, I myself got to take some notes on these 5 P's, because if I had to give one of my weaknesses cognitively, it would be memory. Yeah. So like
produce is the next one.
Produce was number 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So picture, plan, produce.
Right. And it makes sense when you think in order of sequence.
In sequence, yeah, because that's how I remember stuff.
Right.
My wife would always look at me in a funny way, because like she's like, Greg, how could you not remember that? But I remember things systematically.
You mean like she just did?
So like, I will not necessarily, even from engineering school, I'm not a good at can remember all the formula. I really want to have to prove it over to remind myself of how it works.
Right.
Because I remember how things work in sequence.
Okay.
Yeah.
So produce. So you have to put your plan into action. I think that's probably the most important stage. That might be the stage where people stick the most.
Correct.
Because everybody has an idea. Everybody has a plan.
Yeah.
Right. How many people take action on that plan rather than get up and go and work?
And that is the big one, as you said, because you picture, you plan, but if you don't produce, you have no chance of a result. And there are people who don't picture, who never plan, and just produce something, and they get a result. No, it may be 5% success rate. They may fail 19 times and just achieve once. But that once is more than the other person who's never tried to produce at all.
Right.
So that produce is really the big one. And now that I remember, the next one is the pause. Because after you produce, after you've taken action, it's important to check the result. How did it go? And not just learning from failure, but learning from success as well. What worked, what didn't work. And then the 5th P, if produce is what brings success, then the 5th P, which is pay it forward, is the one that brings significance. Because a lot of people get the results and then they stop at themselves. That I got it. This is my secret. Nothing else. But when you're paying it forward, when you're helping somebody else to advance at the same time, because the top is a lonely place if you're there by yourself. So my mission, similar to yours, is to help the people around me in my circle to advance as well.
Right. But how do we get people to say, hey, let me pay it forward? Because a lot of people think of success as a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
Where, okay, I win, you lose. Yeah. Nobody else can win out here. Yeah. Right? How do you get to change that mindset?
You see, it's not a straightforward thing.
Right.
There are a couple of things I would say. Like, there are 2 ways to have the tallest building around town. One is to walk around detonating everybody else's and crushing everything around you until yours is the last standing. Or you build up the entire community. And you will find that as you do that, you would always be protected. Because when you help other people advance their buildings as well, you always get in some form in return. Right. And it doesn't even matter if your building goes 10 feet tall and the people you help go 15 and 20 feet tall, as long as you wanted a 10-foot tall building. If you then want a 100-foot building, then you work on how you work out yourself. But we like to compare relative to others. And right. I think the key is to not do that. To have the battle purely on the inside. Because especially in entrepreneurship, it doesn't make any sense. We all start with different amounts of resources. We start from different places. So who is more successful? The man that has $1 million and started with $1 less, or the man that started with 10 and ended up with 100? I like people that can start with 10 and make 100 and move 10 times forward, as opposed to the person that just increased 0.0001% and say, I'm a big success because of this result.
Right. Because
I see success as distance moved as opposed to just the final destination achieved. Like, you want the result, you want the end result, of course, but it's about what it will make of you in the process. My background is process engineering, so I love that process. And the second thing I would say is that a lot of this approach to success is modern day. There was a time, especially in our people, Caribbean people, where everybody had a little.
Yeah.
Our grandparents didn't have much.
Yeah, and they had so many children.
People got 15 and 20 children.
Dude.
And they're making it work, right?
Yeah.
And they're going above and beyond. They're raising animals because this pig is the school books this year. My grandparents all raised animals. My grandmothers were seamstresses. they made dresses, and they worked again for things that they never directly benefited from, you know. And that's why paying it forward is important to me, because we need to remember that what we have now, be it education, be it material things, they didn't have, but they sacrificed to give us the better chances. And it's important for us to continue that, not just say, we make it, we got the big house, we got the Mercedes Benz and big rides, but that we can pay it forward for the generations to come, that we do it in a systematic foundation way, you know?
Yeah, I like how you think generationally about that.
Yeah.
So I'm new here.
Yeah.
What is the entrepreneurship environment like in Barbados?
I think there's a lot of interest in entrepreneurship at the moment. I think is for a number of reasons. One, you know, that Barbados is going through some economic challenges at the moment, and some people are being forced into entrepreneurship. That is one way that people enter it. Others still have been working in jobs that is not necessarily satisfying to them, and they know that they're capable of more. And I think more younger people, especially in our demographic, are stepping out to take a chance on entrepreneurship. So I would say it's very vibrant. There's a lot of interest, and the key is really helping people to understand the fundamentals of entrepreneurship. Because I myself would admit, I started my companies largely based on passion. So I knew this was my purpose, this was my dream. And then within a year, you realize that I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. The numbers aren't adding up. Right. This isn't making any sense. Like, because I started while being full-time employed. And when you're full-time employed, it masks some of the weaknesses in your entrepreneurial game. Right. So you're doing stuff, you're out there, but you're not depending on your entrepreneurial efforts working month in, month out. That you can feed yourself, take care of your family, honor your responsibilities. So I think we're to that place where the interest in entrepreneurship is there, but we need to get people to understand the pure fundamentals of it. Beyond the passion, besides what you want to do, because I was a very good technician. I could speak, I could coach, I could train, I could write books. But how do you manage the business of doing that? That you're able to build, to grow, and to grow a team. Yeah. Yeah. Which is the ultimate goal.
Yeah. So the listenership for Caribbean Power is just primarily young entrepreneurs and maybe a lot of sidepreneurs, so people who have full-time jobs and still do their thing on the side.
Correct.
And that sort of thing, right? So I want to kind of pivot into this post that you made. 3 lessons from entrepreneurship that can help people who are still employed stay employed if they want to stay employed. I think that was really interesting. I think you spoke about you don't get paid for time spent. It's not about hours for dollars. It's dollars for hours or whatever it is. It's dollars for deliverables. It's dollars for the value that you create.
That is it.
Yeah, can you go into that a little bit? I think those 3 points are really important. If you can't remember them, I'll help you. I have my notes right here.
Well, I appreciate that for sure. So that first point of getting paid for value delivered as opposed to spending time or turning up. If you're currently working a side hustle, you will quickly find out that you need to deliver value and have it worked out how much that value is worth, based on all the other things you have to do around it. I found out the hard way in many ways because you were still comfortable. Whether the business worked or not in a particular month, it wasn't that big a deal. Yeah, you want it to be positive, but if it isn't, well, we just, cut back this month because the salary coming on the 15th. Right. But that mindset can make a difference even when you're an employee, because some employees focus on doing the minimum. So that's not my job description, not me. But you begin to stand out when you're the person who can bring an entrepreneurial eye to the situation, where you can go to management and say, you know what, I notice we're wasting some time or some money here. And I think maybe if we try this, we can reduce our costs, we can improve our efficiency. And you become the person who is not just another person on payroll. So even in my organizations, we want everybody on the team to realize that you have a role in bringing income into the company. So there are times that we take the whole team and you say, okay, right now, for the next hour, everybody making phone calls. or get in contact with the company to see if we can do this next step. Because it's important for people to be aware that no matter if you're an employee or an entrepreneur, if income isn't coming in, your job is not secure by any means. And everyone has a role to play in that ultimately. Of course, as you grow and you diversify into, various departments and everything, you all have that individual focus. But even though I was working in process engineering as an employee, when I was out on the street or with my friends, I'd be promoting the products that I helped to make.
Right.
Because they're like, hey, guys, if you're buying drinks, this got to be the drink here because this is what's paying me and paying other Barbadians. Right. So yeah, that was the first one.
Okay. Then you're taking chances and revenue is not profit.
Yeah. So revenue is not profit. That's a good one to follow because many people, especially, it can be a challenge for entrepreneurs. I'm sure many entrepreneurs out there would remember at some point submitting an invoice for your services and getting the feedback from somebody like, this is too much money for you. Because they see it as, okay, why am I paying you $5,000? And the typical employee may not consider that from that $5,000, you had to spend $3,500 to deliver the service.
Right.
Because if you've never practiced entrepreneurship, you're just accustomed to what I receive as my pay part is mine, and I choose how I spend it personally. As an entrepreneur, what you receive in terms of income, part should be for you in the calculation, but a large part is also for actually running the business, paying staff, paying rent, paying other things that go with it. So it's important for employees to realize, even if you're working, in a company now in another organization, that although it may seem that the company is, getting good sales and making good money, it may not always be the case if the expenses are higher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And then the last one was taking chances.
Right.
So, of course, in entrepreneurship, you have no choice but to take a chance. And I'll be honest with you, Kevin, I'm not really a risky person. Like, I can't say that I crave risk, and I can't say that I'm necessarily comfortable with it either.
But you seem like you calculate those risks.
Yeah.
Then you decide to take those risks. If you see that the upside is worth the risk. That's what it sounds like to me. You don't sound like a wild man to me.
No, not a very wild man. I think maybe my wife is even more comfortable with risk than I am.
Right.
Because sometimes I have to tackle my own engineering brain. Like, when you're training engineering, you're very strong on knowing all the numbers and the probability and the tolerance and all these things. So, like, in my mind, when I look at a situation, it's not as easy as like just saying, okay, sometimes you feel like if you knew less, it might be easier to take certain steps. However, as you mentioned, by calculating risk or having a good idea of what you can see the probability of success is, and sometimes not even that, sometimes just knowing that this particular thing aligns with the vision of where you want to go. So some things that I risk and try, I'm not necessarily sure that has a high percentage of success, but it seems like the next best step I can take to move me towards the vision that I see for myself and my organizations. So you take chances, even though it may not be financially feasible, but you're sure that by taking this step, it will put me in a position to take the next one.
Because even if the project doesn't work, you at least get the lesson from it and you know how to move next time, you know how to operate it next time.
Exactly. And that was a key thing. Like, when I left my job, I wasn't sure it was the right time either. For those listeners who may be considering, okay, when should I take this step? When should I do it? I'm in a position where my dream is to be a professional coach, trainer, and speaker. But if you're getting bookings to go and speak and you can't leave because you have to honor your commitment, and that's important, folks, honor your commitment. Even though you may want to grow your own business, honor where you are today. Do your job where you are today. The time will come when you can take the step if you do it well where you are now. And in taking that step, for me, it wasn't easy. I stressed about it for a while. But you always get signs when you're supposed to make a move. And I got some very clear signs around that time. And I knew in hindsight that although it may not have made sense financially, it was the best time. So like, I can help clients now to be in a better place financially, mentally, spiritually before taking the step. But when I did it, I can't say I had it in place for me. And it made things harder. But at the same time, having taken the step is like you're behind the wall and you're wondering what's on the horizon, what's around the corner. But you can only imagine based on what it sounds like, based on what you heard somebody come up from around the corner and say. But until you take the step and just peep around it, you might see, hey, it's not so bad. And you might see what's better, another way that you can take another step to move forward. But until you look, you'll just be guessing.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I mean, that sounds like a place I want to wrap. But I have another question, but damn. All right. So let's say somebody, they want to think like that, right? They want to think like an engineer, but they studied some other subject like finance or something, right? Just arbitrary, right?
Yeah.
How does that person get around to thinking like a life engineer?
Well, one good way is hiring a coach. Could be me, or it could be somebody else who has.
What do you mean? It could be somebody else. Be yourself.
But no, I believe in abundance, Kevin, and I feel like there's more than enough people for all the coaches out there to have work. So like I always find the clients who are for me, and the people who want to work with me, they seek me out, and so I don't worry about it at all, right? But engineering, like anything else, is something that is learnable. The good thing about having coaches and mentors is that they can accelerate the learning process for you. So you could go online and read the fundamentals of engineering on Google or watch YouTube or anything. But when somebody who is trained in it comes alongside you, it accelerates the process. So, like I said earlier, every coach needs a coach. So like, even when I was speaking about Usain Bolt or Lionel Messi, they're like the top of their class when they're at their peak and at their prime. But they still have coaches. Why is that? And the reason is you cannot be in the game and analyze yourself at the same time. It is impossible. So if you're a cricketer, you can't be completely focused on the net delivery and thinking about my form on that last defensive stroke. You need the coach to pull up the videos and say, hey, step further forward or get further back. So the same thing applies to life engineering. It always helps to accelerate your process and your progress if you have somebody who has that experience and the expertise of coaching, because not everyone does. And I'll probably do a video in the future about some tips in picking a good coach, because it is very much a relationship, and different personalities and different backgrounds in terms of expertise will mesh better together.
How do you scale a coaching practice though?
So the key to that, for me personally, is via the internet. So we've got a lot of infrastructure in place, and you'll be seeing more online in terms of webinars and online courses heading into 2019, where thanks to technology, I can be here, and just like this podcast, it could be 10 or it could be 1,000, but everybody still gets the exact same engagement virtually. So that's where I'm scaling my personal practice. But then for the company, I don't ever want to be the only coach. So because the John Maxwell team is an entire network as well, I'm able to bring other coaches on board as required. And you have a pool that you can pull from as well.
Okay. So before we wrap, I'm giving you open mic, open forum, open platform. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to leave us with?
Is there anything? I don't think so. So I think I will just leave a few words of encouragement, if anything. So wherever you are now, if you are full-time entrepreneurship, if you're running a side hustle and hoping to become full-time eventually, if you're a young person and you're now starting out, the key thing I want you to remember is that any skill is learnable. And beyond that, any skill that you can't learn or that you're not actually good at, with the use of leadership, you can bring people around you who have it. So, for example, in my work as an author, I can see these stories, I imagine it clearly, but I am not the best illustrator. I can see what I want the end result to look like, but I'm not trained in it. So think about who around you can bring on board to support your dream, and make sure that it's a mutually beneficial thing. That it's not about people serving you and you getting to achieve your dream, that you bring people on board who want to move forward as well. So your dream never stops anybody else from dreaming. You may find out that, hey, in the case of an illustrator, as I write this story, my illustrator has a moment now to become better themselves. That an illustrator is out there with a dream saying, hey, I wonder who I can find to illustrate for, that my illustrations and drawing reach the world. Because it always works together in synergy. Just like Kevin and I are here chatting, Caribbean Power Lunch. I like to dream big, so I imagine Caribbean Power Lunch being, million subscriber podcasts all across the world. Of course, it started in Caribbean, but
right after you post it.
Not yet, but someday soon. And what else I'll do for those who may want to connect with me, maybe get into a session, I'm going to do some free ones at the start of 2019 online, so that wherever you are, you can come have a session with Life Engineering Inc. See if it's the right fit. See if you feel better, stronger, more powerful by being a part of our online webinars. And I'll leave the link with Kevin that you can subscribe, register, and let us help you to engineer your life and engineer your enterprise.
Hey, that's very generous, man. Thanks a lot. Podcast World, there you have it. Life Engineering with Gregory Skeete. Subscribe to Caribbean Power Lunch at caribbeanpowerlunch.com/subscribe. Check us out on Castbox, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. And with that, thanks, Greg.
Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Podcast World, Barbados, we are out.